The battlefield connection. The ground trembled as plasma bolts rained from the sky, turning the once lush terrain into a burning wasteland. The air was thick with acrid smoke and the deafening sounds of explosions. Captain Ethan Blackwell crawled for cover, his body battered and bloody. His stealth armor, now a ruined mess of sparks and scorch marks, clung to him like a second skin, useless against the relentless assault of the mechanical Nexus forces. Ethan gasped for breath, his vision swimming as he pressed himself against the cold, jagged remains of a fallen turret. Every movement sent pain shooting through his side where shrapnel had torn into him. His squad was gone, wiped out in an ambush he hadn't seen coming. Alone and surrounded, he clenched his teeth and gripped his rifle, refusing to go down without a fight. But as the Nexus drones closed in, their crimson eyes glowing with malice, Ethan knew his time was running out. His muscles burned as he raised his weapon, prepared to make his final stand. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over him, impossibly tall and radiant amidst the chaos. A figure emerged from the smoke, her form both elegant and terrifying. She was at least 12 feet tall, her shimmering emerald skin glowing faintly against the darkened battlefield. Her armor, a seamless blend of artistry and technology, hugged her powerful frame. Midnight black hair cascaded down her back, catching the light of distant explosions. Her golden eyes scanned the battlefield with precision, locking onto Ethan's crumpled form. Before Ethan could process what was happening, the alien warrior moved with a speed and grace that defied her size. She swung her massive plasma blade, slicing through the Nexus drones with effortless precision. Each strike was a work of art, the weapon humming as it tore through metal and circuitry. "Hold on, little warrior," her voice rang out, deep and resonant, yet carrying a strange gentleness that seemed to cut through the chaos. Ethan blinked, barely able to comprehend her words before she knelt beside him. Her massive hand reached out, and he instinctively flinched. "I'm fine," Ethan croaked, his pride wrestling with the reality of his broken body. "I can still fight." Her lips curved into a small, amused smile. "Humans," she said, her tone both fond and exasperated. "Always so stubborn." Without another word, she scooped him up as if he weighed nothing. Ethan's protests died in his throat as she cradled him against her chest, her armor cool against his feverish skin. The world spun as she carried him through the battlefield, her strides long and purposeful. Despite the chaos around them, she moved with unshakable focus, dodging plasma fire and leaping over debris with ease. Ethan, though disoriented, couldn't help but notice the way her golden eyes flickered with both determination and concern. "Who are you?" he managed to whisper, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. "You may call me Zyra," she replied, her voice steady. "And you, little warrior, are in no condition to fight. So, rest." Ethan's world faded to black as exhaustion overtook him, but not before he felt a strange sense of safety in the arms of the towering alien. Sanctuary among giants. Ethan woke to the hum of alien technology. The room around him was dimly lit, its walls lined with glowing blue panels that pulsed rhythmically, casting an ethereal light. He was lying on a medical bed far too small for the room's proportions. Above him, intricate patterns of shifting light danced across the ceiling, mesmerizing in their complexity. "Awake at last," came Zyra's voice. Ethan turned his head to see her standing by the door, her towering frame bathed in the soft glow of the room. Her armor was gone, replaced by a flowing tunic that emphasized her elegant yet formidable physique. Her golden eyes studied him intently, and for a moment, Ethan felt like a bug under a microscope. "Where am I?" Ethan croaked, his throat dry. "You're in an Arithian field base," Zyra replied, stepping closer. "Behind the front lines, for now." Ethan tried to sit up, but pain flared through his body, forcing him back down. Zyra's massive hand rested gently on his shoulder, holding him in place with surprising tenderness. "You're still injured. Don't be foolish. Why did you bring me here?" Ethan asked, wincing. "I could have handled myself." Zyra raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of amusement and exasperation. Handled yourself? You were moments from death when I found you. Ethan scowled, his pride stinging. I had a plan. And that plan involved bleeding out on the battlefield? Zyra shot back, crossing her arms. Despite her stern words, there was a hint of warmth in her tone. You humans are remarkable, resilient, resourceful, but you're also reckless. Ethan couldn't argue with that. Instead, he looked around the room, taking in the strange mix of human and alien technology. This doesn't look like standard human med tech, he said, trying to change the subject. It's not, Zyra admitted. We Erythians have reservations about sharing our technology. But I made an exception for you. Ethan frowned. Why? Zyra hesitated, her golden eyes flickering. Because you remind me of something my people have forgotten. A time when we fought not for duty, but for something greater. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of her words, but he sensed there was more to Zyra than she let on. For now, he focused on recovering, though his curiosity about the Erythians, and Zyra, grew with each passing day. A warrior's bond. Days turned into weeks as Ethan recovered under Zyra's care. The Erythian field base, though alien in design and atmosphere, became his sanctuary. The Erythians themselves were an enigma to him, towering beings of unparalleled grace and power, with skin that shimmered in various hues and eyes that seemed to pierce into one's soul. Yet, despite their physical beauty and advanced technology, there was a coldness to them, an emotional detachment that Ethan couldn't quite understand. Zyra, however, was different. She was warm and attentive, her stern demeanor often softened by a quiet compassion that set her apart from her kind. Every day, she checked on Ethan personally, her massive hands surprisingly gentle as she cleaned his wounds and adjusted the strange alien devices that accelerated his healing. At first, Ethan found her presence intimidating, but as they spent more time together, he began to see beyond her formidable exterior. One evening, as the two sat in the medical chamber, Ethan decided to break the silence. Zyra, he began hesitantly, why are you doing this? Why are you helping me? Zyra paused, her golden eyes flickering as she considered his question. Do you want the diplomatic answer, or the honest one? I'll take honest, Ethan replied with a smirk. She smiled faintly, a rare sight that made her seem almost human. Because you remind me of something my people have lost. Humans, you fight with a passion we can't comprehend. You're small, fragile even, but you face impossible odds with a stubbornness that borders on insanity. It's inspiring. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Inspiring? I thought we were just reckless. That too, Zyra admitted with a chuckle. But there's more to it than that. Your kind refuses to give up, no matter the cost. That's something we Erythians have forgotten. We've become too calculated, too focused on preserving ourselves. Watching you fight, even when you were outnumbered and wounded, it reminded me of why we joined this war in the first place. Ethan leaned back, her words sinking in. So, what happened? Why did your people lose that fire? Zyra's expression grew somber. It's complicated. We've been fighting for so long that we've lost sight of what we're fighting for. Survival has become our only goal, and in the process, we've forgotten how to truly live. Her words struck a chord with Ethan. He had seen the same thing happen to some of his fellow soldiers, men and women who had fought so long that they became hollow, their purpose lost amidst the chaos of war. That's no way to live, he said softly. No, Zyra agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. It's not. The room fell silent, the weight of her confession hanging heavy in the air. For the first time, Ethan saw Zyra not as an indomitable warrior, but as someone burdened by the same fears and doubts that plagued him. It was a strange realization, and it deepened the bond between them in a way he hadn't expected. The Nexus assault. The fragile piece of the field base was shattered one morning when the blaring sound of alarms echoed through the corridors. Ethan jolted awake, his body still sore but his instincts honed from years of combat. He threw on his gear as Zyra stormed into the room, her armor gleaming and her expression grim. "Nexus forces have breached the perimeter," she said curtly. "We need to move." Ethan grabbed his weapon, ignoring the protest of his still healing wounds. "I'm coming with you." Zyra frowned. "You're not ready for combat." "I'm not sitting here while your people fight to protect me," Ethan shot back, his voice firm. "I can handle myself." For a moment, Zyra looked as though she might argue, but then she sighed and nodded. "Stay close to me. And don't do anything reckless." The two made their way to the front lines, where the Nexus forces were advancing with relentless precision. The battlefield was chaos. Erythian warriors clashed with mechanical drones, their plasma weapons carving through the enemy ranks. Despite their advanced technology and size, the Erythians were struggling to hold the line against the sheer numbers of the Nexus. Ethan quickly assessed the situation, his tactical mind kicking into gear. "They're funneling your forces into a choke point," he said, pointing to a narrow pass where the fighting was fiercest. "We need to flank them and cut off their reinforcements." Zyra glanced at him, her golden eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You think it will work?" "It's our best shot," Ethan replied. "But we'll need a small team to pull it off." Zyra nodded. "Then let's do it." Together, they gathered a handful of Erythian warriors and set out to execute their plan. The operation was risky, requiring them to navigate treacherous terrain while avoiding detection, but Ethan's strategy paid off. They ambushed the Nexus reinforcements, disrupting their supply lines and forcing the enemy to retreat. As the dust settled, Zyra turned to Ethan, her expression one of genuine admiration. "You did well, little warrior," she said, her voice filled with respect. Ethan grinned, despite his exhaustion. "Not bad for a reckless human, huh?" Zyra chuckled, a sound that seemed to lighten the weight of the day's events. "Not bad at all." Defying the divide. Ethan's heroics on the battlefield earned him the respect of some Erythians, but it also drew the attention of their council. A formal hearing was called to address Zyra's actions, and Ethan found himself standing in a grand chamber surrounded by towering Erythian leaders. "This human has no place among us," one of the council members declared, his voice cold and disdainful. "Commander Zyra, your actions have violated our protocols and endangered our people." Zyra stepped forward, her towering frame imposing even among her own kind. "Ethan Blackwell is not just a human. He is a warrior, a strategist, and a valuable ally. Without his plan, we would have lost the battle. His recklessness is a liability," another council member argued. "Humans are impulsive and unpredictable. They lack the discipline required to fight alongside us." Ethan, who had been silent until now, took a step forward. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "We are impulsive. We're unpredictable. And we make mistakes. But we also adapt. We find solutions when there shouldn't be any. And we don't give up, no matter how impossible the odds." His words hung in the air, the council members exchanging uncertain glances. Zyra's golden eyes flickered with pride as she looked down at him. "I will take full responsibility for my actions," she said firmly. "But I will not abandon someone who has proven their worth, simply because they are different." The council deliberated for what felt like hours before finally reaching a decision. Ethan would be allowed to stay, but under strict supervision. It wasn't a perfect outcome, but it was a victory nonetheless. As they left the chamber, Ethan glanced up at Zyra. "Thanks for standing up for me." She smiled faintly. "You've earned it, little warrior." A warrior's choice. The tension within the Erythian ranks grew thicker in the days following the council's verdict. While some warriors had come to respect Ethan after his contributions in battle, others viewed his presence as a threat to their traditions. Zyra, once regarded as an unshakable leader, now found herself under scrutiny from her peers. Yet she stood tall, her golden eyes unwavering as she defended her decision to protect and fight alongside the human. Ethan, too, felt the weight of their disapproval. Every step he took within the base seemed to be watched, every action judged. Yet he refused to let it deter him. He worked tirelessly to prove his worth, assisting with strategies, training with the Erythian warriors, and sharing insights from his experiences fighting the Nexus forces. Slowly, a few began to warm to him, their initial skepticism replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, admiration. One evening, as the sun set over the jagged mountains surrounding the Erythian base, Ethan found Zyra standing alone on a high balcony, gazing out at the horizon. Her armor had been replaced by a flowing tunic, the soft fabric swaying gently in the breeze. She looked almost serene, but Ethan could sense the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. "You okay?" he asked, approaching her cautiously. Zyra didn't turn, her gaze fixed on the fading light. "I've been better," she admitted. "The council may have allowed you to stay, but their judgment of me has not softened. To them, I've broken sacred traditions." Ethan leaned against the railing beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong. You made a call to save lives. Isn't that what being a leader is about?" Zyra sighed, her golden eyes finally meeting his. "Among my people, leadership is tied to adherence to tradition. They see my bond with you as a betrayal of those principles." Ethan frowned. "So what? You're supposed to abandon what you believe in just to appease them?" She smiled faintly. "You speak as though it's that simple. For Erythians, our sense of identity is deeply rooted in our traditions. To go against them is to risk losing one's place among our people." Ethan studied her, the weight of her words sinking in. "And you're willing to risk that? For me?" Zyra's expression softened. "You're more than just a human ally, Ethan. You've reminded me of what it means to fight with purpose, to care deeply for something, or someone, even when it's not the easiest path. That's worth the risk." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence filled only by the distant hum of alien machinery. Ethan's chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and something deeper welling up inside him. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Zyra replied, her voice gentle. "Just, don't make me regret this." Ethan nodded, his resolve strengthening. "I won't." Bound by battle and beyond. The final test of their bond came sooner than either of them expected. A massive Nexus fleet descended upon the Erythian homeworld, their attack swift and devastating. The base where Ethan and Zyra had spent the past weeks was one of their primary targets, its strategic importance too great for the Nexus to ignore. The Erythian warriors mobilized quickly, their advanced technology giving them an edge against the mechanical invaders. Yet the sheer numbers of the Nexus forces threatened to overwhelm even the most coordinated defense. Ethan and Zyra found themselves at the center of the chaos, their partnership tested in ways neither had anticipated. As explosions lit up the night sky, Ethan and Zyra led a combined force of humans and Erythians in a desperate bid to hold the line. Zyra, her emerald skin glowing faintly in the light of the plasma fire, fought with a ferocity that inspired those around her. Her massive plasma blade carved through Nexus drones with precision, each swing a testament to her skill and strength. Ethan, though dwarfed by his alien companion, proved just as vital. His quick thinking and tactical acumen turned the tide of several skirmishes, his commands rallying the human and Erythian forces when hope seemed lost. Together, they were an unstoppable force, their synergy born of mutual trust and respect. But the battle was far from over. As the Nexus forces pushed closer to the heart of the base, Ethan and Zyra found themselves facing a new threat. A colossal Nexus war machine, its towering form dwarfing even the Erythian warriors. Its crimson eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence, and its weapons hummed with deadly energy. "We can't let that thing reach the base," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. Zyra nodded, her golden eyes narrowing. Agreed. But this won't be easy. It never is, Ethan replied with a wry smile. The two charged at the war machine, their movements perfectly synchronized. Zyra's blade clashed against its armored limbs, sparks flying as she struck with all her strength. Ethan weaved around its massive feet, planting explosives at key points while dodging its deadly strikes. The battle was brutal, each second a test of their endurance and determination. Zyra's armor bore the scars of countless blows, and Ethan's body screamed in protest with every movement. Yet neither of them wavered, their bond driving them forward. Finally, with a coordinated effort, they brought the war machine down. Zyra delivered the final blow, her blade piercing its core as Ethan triggered the explosives, sending the massive construct crashing to the ground. The resulting explosion lit up the battlefield, a beacon of hope for their allies. As the dust settled, the remaining Nexus forces began to retreat, their ranks broken and their assault thwarted. Cheers erupted from the combined human and Erythian forces, their victory hard-earned but decisive. Ethan and Zyra stood side by side, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the unspoken connection between them stronger than ever. "You did well, little warrior," Zyra said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Ethan chuckled, his voice hoarse. "Not bad for a reckless human, huh?" "Not bad at all," she replied, her golden eyes shining with warmth. In the days that followed, the bond between humans and Erythians grew stronger, their shared victory paving the way for a new alliance. Ethan and Zyra became symbols of what was possible when two species put aside their differences and fought for a common cause. As they stood together on the balcony of the Erythian Council chamber, overlooking a world that was beginning to heal, Zyra turned to Ethan and said, "This is just the beginning." Ethan smiled, his gaze unwavering. "Yeah. And I wouldn't want to face it with anyone else." The two warriors stood side by side, their bond unbreakable, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they were more than allies, they were a force to be reckoned with, bound by battle and something far greater.